can't really see it, which is nice because the strut mounts are in the way. So it kind of works out, but you can see the motor's still loose in here. So I still have a little. Welcome back to the workbench where we try to make things. And what we're trying to make right now is Revell's 1971 Mach 1 Mustang for the Blue Ox Model Shop Street Machine group build. And I made a good bit of progress between last time and today. Again, focusing under the hood in the engine compartment, and finally got the motor to sit down where it needs to be. Let me move some things around. We'll take a look down low here at the bottom camera, and you can see how low that motor is sitting in the engine compartment now. So we're gonna have no worries about the hood closing, anything getting in the way. Before, if you're new to the series, before this motor was sitting at least a good millimeter, probably 1.5 millimeters, even maybe 2 higher, which made the hood very tight. Like we had to really squish things together. I've got the strut mounts. Actually, let me move this because it's not glued. The air filter. This is mounted. It's glued in place, and you can see we actually have. Hopefully, you can see we have gap in between the strut mount and the valve cover. Before, absolutely not. In fact, it had to squish it down. And of course, the way we did that was just by filling in the notches that were here, where the spindles mounted into the uprights here, the shocks and whatnot. We filled in those little notches, and now this peg sits on top of, or the better way to say it is, the spindle sits below that peg, and so we're sitting about 1 millimeter lower. Plus we thinned out. Now here's the thing, the motor is actually not even glued in. It's just glued, the strut mounts are glued, and then the bottom, all this bottom suspension and steering stuff is glued in. But we thinned out these parts here, which I need to give a bit of a paint job. But right now, that's all that's holding the motor in. But we can see, one way we can see how much lower it's sitting is our sway bar here. Hopefully you guys can see this. And I don't remember if, I don't know if you remember, but the sway bar used to sit just almost at the same level as the oil pan. Now we are it sits a good 2 millimeters. That's probably more than 2 millimeters. I don't think, I don't have anything to measure with, but I bet that's that's pushing 3 mil. Oh, it's more than that. I bet that's a good, I mean, it's a good bit. It's sitting a way lower, higher, whichever way we're holding this thing. The pan sits a lot lower than the anti-sway bar now. So that kind of gives you an idea of how much lower we're sitting, and it's sitting nice and flat. Now I do have to mention, to get it to sit flat, because it started sitting lower, and you can't see it now because the strut mounts are in the way, I had to break the master cylinder off out of the way because it was pushing this driver's side valve cover that way. So the motor would sit down low but crooked, if that makes sense. So I just broke that off, put the motor in, and now this is actually holding it in a little bit too because it's sitting above the valve cover. You can't really see it, which is nice because the strut mounts are in the way. So it kind of works out, but you can see the motor's still loose in here. So I still have a little leeway as to where I want to kind of set it. And I'm not going to mount the motor until I put the rear end with the drive shaft in and the exhaust in, because that can determine kind of where we need to sit this. And as a reminder, and I don't know if I'm going to use them. Do I have them sitting here? I think they might be downstairs on my work table downstairs. I do have motor mounts that I can put in on the underside here. I can go in and put in some motor mounts to hold this in. I'm not sure if I'm going to do that. I might just, I don't know how, I might just leave it. I literally might leave it just kind of free floating and just mount it via the drive shaft and exhaust that comes in and hits the collectors. So I'm not sure if I'm going to use those or not. Now I do have to thread in, so this radiator is not glued and I can pop the radiator out. I still have to put in that power wire coming from the starter up to the starter solenoid. I had it mounted and it broke loose again. I think it's going to be easier once we have everything in place. Before I put the radiator in, I can scoot, I can kind of scoot that wire in this way and then bend it up here and then mount it up here and let it just stick in, basically I'm just going to stick it in behind the starter. I don't know if you can even see. That's why I'm going to be able to do this. You can't even see the starter down there. So just being able to see the wire come out, you know what I mean? It's going to be kind of stuck in behind there. You can't see where it attaches anyways. So we'll make the more of the permanent attachment up top here, I think, is going to be the game plan on that. So I still need to do that. I did get the proportioning valve kind of sitting down there. You can kind of sit it down there. All the brake lines are running. If you guys can even see them, the brake lines are running up in there to it. Yeah, even you can't even see the brake line. It's in there. With a flashlight, you can see it. It's running right there. It's super short, so there's not much of a brake line on this side. This brake line, you can see it just doubles the fuel line. Let me see if I can get you can see it. There's like double fuel line going there, and then you can see it coming over this way into this shock tower. Anyways, they're all right there to it. But I do still need to add the two come down because I had to break this loose, the master cylinder. I didn't put those lines in yet, obviously. So I need to add the two lines that just go down to the proportioning valve, and then that'll have that done. I think I'm going to go ahead and run a throttle linkage that just kind of comes off the carburetor and heads down into the firewall that way. I'll just take some. I think I'm going to take some, probably the fuel line. Here's our fuel line coming in this side. Actually, I might take something a little heavier. Well, now the fuel line will probably work, but here's the fuel line that connection needs to be made. Our fuel filter back there, which hides under the shock tower strut, which kind of helps it. It's a little oversized, our fuel filter is, and it being underneath there, I think it kind of helps hide that oversizedness, but it's still there if you kind of tuck your head down and look. But I'll need to make that connection to the carburetor. But I think I'm going to use some of the fuel line. I'll just strip some of the insulation off so we get just some metal that comes out here, metal line. I'll run it to this. I think I'll just run metal to here, this little tab on the intake, which I guess maybe that's what that tab's for, is where I'll just run metal line to there and then fuel line. I guess that's what that's even for, right? Is for the throttle cable. Anyways, and then I'll run the black line, or the insulated part of the line down into the firewall. And then once you put the filter on, which should be kind of the last thing to go on, I guess, if I can get it to sit up there, it'll kind of hide all that connections to the carburetor, so we don't have to get too detailed with that. But I'm not going to do any of that until I have the motor sitting exactly where it needs, because again, this can move around. So I want to have this more permanent in place, which is actually going to be more forward, like that is where it needs to go for the drive shaft to work. About right there is where it's going to actually be sitting. But I need that permanent before I can make those connections, obviously, because then it'll break loose when I try to move them around. I guess I could make the connection from the carburetor to this little tab with just a metal line. I could do that. But anyways, yeah. So that would, I think, wrap up. I need to do little paint touch-ups here and there and that kind of thing, but that wraps up the engine compartment. So we can get to, let's go back up top here. Then we can just get to the bodywork, finishing the bodywork, or really just the body paint. There is no real body work, I don't think, that we need to do. But yeah, and then also, another thing I was going to mention, now I can get the exhaust and, let me flip it over. I can get the exhaust and the rear end in, so then we can set our stance too. Remember, we're going to have to adjust where our wheels sit up here, because our spindles are now sitting lower. They're sitting a little further back too, just because of the way it. Oh, I also want to mention, I was able to make the connections back here. Also, so for our steering box and whatnot, I was able to make those connections, the glue points. So we got glue points here, 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 and here. The only ones we're missing is here and here. I could actually put some glue in there, but I didn't. I don't think we need to. I'm just going to leave them probably loose, but we've got 4 points of connection, so that works out also. But yeah, once we get the rear end in and all that, we can set our kind of stance, how our wheels are going to sit, and we're going to adjust them up front. Just as a reminder, we'll adjust them up front here on the front end. So the rear are going to kind of sit where they sit, I guess is the best way to say that. I mean, we'll push them up as far as we can. We want this thing to sit as low as we can get it, but wherever it is, and then we'll adjust the front how it needs to be adjusted. Anyways, so now I'm kind of excited. We got the motor sitting in there. I was really worried because it was just having to be squeezed in there, manhandled in there. So I'm happy that it literally is just loosely sitting in there in a good position now. Makes me a lot more confident on moving forward now with the getting everything else installed as far as rear ends, exhausts, all that. Basically finishing up the chassis portion of this. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I think it turned out pretty good, especially for my first time kind of doing this amount of detailing and whatnot. I think it's turning out good. It's turning out good is where I would put it. The next one will be better. Next one will be better. It's the way it goes, but I'm happy with this. I think it looks pretty good. Let me know what you think down in the description. I'm going to get back to work at this. I want to get the chassis wrapped up so we can get to paint and we can get this project done. So anyways, leave me those comments, hit the like button if you would, subscribe if you want to keep up with these builds, ring the bell, these still ring, I don't know, do all those things you do on YouTube, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.